Welcome back to Two Therapists Walk into a Podcast. We're really glad you're here with us today. If you're new to the podcast, I'm Robin Green, LCSW.
And I'm Stephanie Edsel, LCSW. We're both trauma therapists and friends sharing conversations that we hope feel both grounding and validating.
Here, we talk about trauma and the nervous system in ways that are honest, kind, and never shaming. This is a space where we hope you'll feel safe to be curious about yourself, your patterns, and what healing can look like when we take some of that pressure off.
Before we get into today's episode, let's just take a moment to arrive. If it feels okay, you might pause and take a gentle breath. Feel your feet on the ground beneath you. Notice what's around you. You don't have to do anything, just notice. This is your invitation to check in with yourself and land in this moment, however you are.
We are so grateful you are here with us. Today we're talking about how trauma impacts the brain and nervous system. We're going to explore why some of your reactions, like freezing up, zoning out, feeling edgy, or snapping at someone, aren't character flaws. They're actually protective responses from a brain and body that learn to keep you safe.
We'll walk you through what's happening in the brain, what it means for your daily life, and share some gentle tools you can try if you're feeling overwhelmed or disconnected.
So, Stephanie, I'm just wondering, when did you first learn about how trauma affects the brain? Like, when did it kind of click for you?
Well, I think in college, when I was getting my bachelor's in like social work, the stuff I was learning wasn't really geared toward that, but I found a book that I'm sure some of you have heard of called The Body Keeps the Score. And that was 10 years ago. And when I read that book, I was just floored by some of the information, just that, term of psychoeducation. It really does matter. I think that knowledge is power really helped me kind of conquer my own thoughts, I guess, about trauma and maybe those mysteries that we're always, kind of shying away from.
Sure. Yeah.
What about you?
Oh, man. When I think about that, I think really about when I worked at a residential treatment center, and the way that they were looking at healing was just kind of new to me. So they really brought in modalities from like Peter Levine. And so then that got me looking at Waking the Tiger, that book, since we're talking about books,
Mm-hmm.
And just how he kind of compared animals and humans and how they go through trauma and we do, and just his somatic approach. He really is the founder of somatic experiencing. And so,
Right.
that bottom up approach. So,
Yeah. I love that
mhm.
idea, that bottom up approach, trying to tell people. I think that might even just look our next prompt of that's probably the most surprising and validating thing that I did learn was how often we try to top down regulate, right? I'm trying to think my way out of an emotional situation or when I'm already escalated and, I don't have those same abilities that we do when we're regulated to solve a problem. And
Right.
so figuring out where is this, pain located in my body, we're not really, trained to do that or accustomed to turning inward and kind of focusing on that somatic piece of emotion.
For sure. Yeah. And one of the things that I really learned during that time was the nervous system doesn't age. Like we age, but our nervous system doesn't. So it can trigger so many things that, even happen years and years past. So
100%. I talk about this almost every single session I have with people,
Mhm.
just trying to help them remember, like, that does not have a timestamp. So whatever it experiences is what it feels and when it felt it. And so trauma happens out of like those reactions afterward happen out of context often, right?
For
Just
sure.
because it's stuck in the nervous system. It's not actually in the event itself. It's somewhere, almost like a little gas bubble. And so trying to figure out, geez, where is that pain and how do we reach it and how do we release that?
Right. Right. Do you think that you have ever, I'm sure you have, had a moment where like your nervous system completely took over and then you only really understood it in hindsight?
Yes, 100%. I think just coming from a background of recovery, um, learning just lots of tools on how to not engage in a lot of those behaviors that were just life threatening, really, at the end of the day when you think about it. And so I think just living in a fight or flight um, time period of my life, very indicative that we don't have control over our nervous system as well as we probably need to.
Mm-hmm. And also, even in those moments where we might freeze up, and then later shame ourselves, it's it's validating in that sense that like when you understand more about the brain, just those primal responses that you have no control over. And some real life examples like freezing during a conversation or a difficult conversation, zoning out during a stressful event, feeling constantly on edge for like no clear reason at all, or even avoiding something important and not knowing why, or forgetting parts of a conversation, losing your words under pressure. Uh, so just some real life examples.
Yeah, for sure. So let's just pause here for a second and just name how often folks feel shame for these things. We're so quick to ask, what's wrong with me? Instead of, what happened to me? When you start to understand your brain and body were reacting out of protection, it changes the whole story. Just as I said yesterday, I try to mention this a lot with specific clients, especially ones that, and they're in their 50s. I think there's a lot of people in their 50s right now that are having these awakening moments of what what is actually going on
Yeah.
and how do I fix it or what do I do? And allowing them, you know, that space of there's things you did not know you did not know. And you are not doing yourself a favor by punishing your consciousness or your subconsciousness really for that matter. So be wary of that and know your again nervous system doesn't know the day or time. It just knows how it feels.
Right. Right. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. So let's go on to the second part of our episode here. What trauma actually does to the brain. I know you're all very interested. So sometimes when we start talking out the brain, people feel like it's too complex or scientific to follow, and we get that. But once you understand a few key parts, it can be incredibly validating. That's why we break it down into small, understandable pieces so you can see yourself in it, not get lost in the language.
All right. So thinking about the brain, located in the deeper inner part of the brain is the amygdala. And this small part acts like a smoke alarm. It gets hyperactive when we've been through trauma. And it kind of sends out high alert signals, even when the danger isn't real or current. An example of this is reacting to small triggers as if they're major threats, like your partner's tone, a sudden sound, even a look someone gives you.
Yes, located in the front part of your brain, just behind your forehead, is the prefrontal cortex. This is your thinking and planning center. This pretty critical part of the brain. It helps with decision making, language, and reasoning. And when we are dysregulated or escalated emotionally, then this part goes offline, meaning you're not going to have access to the files you normally have access to, which make it easy to settle the self down. So an example might be like blanking out when you need to speak up, or struggling to plan or organize things when you're stressed out.
So, tucked in close to the brain's emotional center near the amygdala is the hippocampus. And this helps with memory and context. And trauma can shrink the hippocampus over time, which makes it harder to differentiate between past and present. Some examples are fragmented memories, time confusion, or re experiencing past events like they're happening now.
Here are some nervous system responses. Hyperarousal, which is going to be that fight or flight mode. You may feel anxious, irritable, restless, easily startled, or like you're constantly bracing for something. And then we have hypoarousal. This is freeze or faint. You may feel numb, spaced out, disconnected, or like you can't move or speak. Chronic dysregulation. This includes mixed states like fawning, emotional shutdown, or swinging between extremes. We'll touch upon all of these terms in future episodes. But an example looks like constantly saying yes to things you don't want to do, or feeling emotionally numb one moment and flooded the next.
Trauma can mimic or overlap with neurodivergence, especially ADHD. The impulsivity, distractibility, time blindness, and those memory issues, they can be trauma related. It's not always either or, it can be both.
It totally can be both. Two things can be true at the same time. Also, your brain is not broken. It's brilliant. It's learned to protect you. The issue isn't dysfunction, it's adaptation. This understanding alone can be deeply healing.
Now that we understand what's happening, let's talk about how to work with our brains and bodies, not against them.
Here are a few practices that can help regulate the nervous system and support your healing. Co-regulation. We're wired for connection. So being with someone who feels grounded, calm, and emotionally safe can actually help regulate your system. This could be a friend, therapist, pet, or even a comforting memory.
Some grounding techniques. One of our favorites is the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 technique. Naming 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 things you can hear, 2 things you can smell, and 1 thing you can taste. Or simply take 1 deep breath. It brings you right back to the present.
Body-based practices. This looks like humming, rocking, stretching, walking barefoot on the earth, or doing bilateral movements like tapping your shoulders or swinging your arms gently. These practices support brain integration by helping both hemispheres communicate, calming the whole system.
Something we call name it to tame it, labeling what you're feeling with compassion. So this is going to sound like, this feels like anxiety, or my amygdala is doing its thing. This can reduce intensity and give you more agency in the moment.
Rituals and rhythm. I love this. Kind of makes sense as to why we like exercising or even dancing. Our nervous system thrives on predictability. Small routines like lighting a candle in the morning, playing the same music before bed, or taking a daily walk can offer a sense of safety, because brain does need to know what is the plan. Otherwise, it gets pretty sad and confused.
You don't have to do everything at once. Pick one thing, stay curious. Safety and regulation builds slowly, and your body is always listening.
So today, we explored how trauma affects the brain and nervous system, not to pathologize you, but to remind you that your reactions make perfect sense in the context of what you've lived through. These are adaptations, survival strategies, And now you have the chance to meet them with understanding rather than shame.
Okay, let's transition. It is time for our nervous system nugget. Your brain is constantly rewiring in response to what you give it. Small, consistent signals of safety, like rest, connection, breath, and rhythm, can reshape even the oldest patterns. You don't have to force it. You don't have to rush it. You just have to keep showing up with gentleness.
Proud of you for being here. We're rooting for your nervous system. And next time, we'll be diving into regulation versus disconnection. Are you really calm? We will be differentiating true regulation from freeze/dissociation. So be sure to tune in. And remember, healing isn't linear, and we're here for the ride.
Thanks for sitting with us today. If something resonated, we'd love it if you shared the episode, left a review, or connected with us on social media. We're two therapists walk into a podcast on most platforms. You can listen and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. This podcast is for informational and educational purposes only. It is not therapy, does not replace therapy, and does not establish a therapist-client relationship. If you're in crisis, please reach out to a qualified mental health professional or call 988 in the US. Robin Green is a licensed therapist in Arizona, and Stephanie Edsall is licensed in Utah, and this podcast is intended for a general audience.